All right, welcome to Strong Talks by Strong Fitness Magazine. This is episode 3. I'm your host, Gail Mitch, and today we have a super special guest. Meet Rita Catolino. She is a Strong Fitness athlete cover model, as well as a Strong Fitness Magazine health expert. So you're seeing her articles throughout the magazine, different issues. And so today I welcome you here.
Thank you for having me. Super excited.
Yes, and total fangirl moment for me. I have been a huge fan of yours since like back in the Arnold days, probably like 2009, 8, 9. Like it's been a long time. So
Making me
when
feel old.
yeah. Oh, hey, we're the same
We're
age,
the
so
same
I get
age,
it.
right?
But
Okay.
it's yes. So yeah, just seeing your journey from afar and stuff, being really excited here today to actually get to ask you questions about it. So again, welcome.
Thank you so
And
much.
I love starting with hearing a little bit about your background story for our readers. Like, what was it? Like, where did your fitness journey begin? And kind of like from then till now, what was like the biggest, like your background?
Yeah, so I grew up in a exact opposite of fitness kind of lifestyle. I have Italian immigrant parents, so the focus was on culture, food, everything, music. I grew up playing the piano, the violin, music school. I went to a specialized music school, everything that my parents could instill in me that was culture based. And lots of food. It was always about food, right? Especially coming from nothing. My dad came from a small hometown, not much, then coming into abundance in America. It was about like, we'd be eating a meal and what are we going to eat for the next meal? So that was how I was raised. And I took that to the best of my advantage and was quite overweight growing up. And I wasn't aware of, I didn't have any body awareness. I wasn't a kid who dabbled in any diet or anything like that because I thought I was fine. Like, and I was fine. So I'm not here to say that, being
Sure.
overweight is a bad thing. But slowly, as the years went on and I went into adulthood, I just kept getting kind of bigger and bigger. And that's when it started to bother me. I started to, realize that humor was my crutch. So by making other people laugh, I
Yes.
wouldn't notice what I looked like. If I was the class clown, that was my kind of, so I started to find all these narratives and things to hide behind to not deal with that. And it wasn't until I moved to Spain, I have a degree in Spanish language and literature, and I was studying abroad, doing some research, that I was trying to fit in all the clothes there. And Spanish women
Oh.
are very tiny, like
Mhm.
tiny both ways. And I'm 5'7", and just all around I was 45 pounds bigger than I am now, and I couldn't fit in any of the clothes. And I remember them sending me down the street to the tallas grandes, which means big sizes. It was a
Oh,
German
okay.
shop, and I think that was like my aha moment, thinking like, oh my God, is something wrong with me, right? And for this particular culture and society, it's not that it was wrong, but it was different, right?
Sure.
um, and at that age, embracing different is challenging. Now at 44, embracing different is great. But back then it was like, oh no, I don't fit the mold. I need to do something. So I started dabbling in walking and running. I started smoking cigarettes, taking food away, like all the things that the Spanish women did around me, right? Because if it worked for
Yeah.
them, it must work for
Sure.
me. And I think I need to kind of, I don't want to speak forever because I'm Italian and it may take a few hours to get through this, but fast forward to when my daughter was born in 2006. And I think
How
it
old were
wasn't,
you at that time
I
when you
was
had your
20,
daughter?
26, 26.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so 26 is when everything kind of, all the puzzle pieces came together. Obviously, I'd stopped smoking. I moved back to Canada from Spain. I have this daughter in my hands. My mom was overweight growing up. I watched all those implications in her life. And I
Sure.
remember looking at my daughter and thinking, okay, now's the time to do it right. Because not only is it for me, but I'm setting it an example for this future being in my life. And I have to level up in order to be a better mother, a better parent, and all those things. So I think 6 weeks postpartum, I joined a mom and baby class. I started going to the gym. I started with body pump because I knew nothing. I knew nothing about weights.
Sure.
I saw a girl in the weight room. I loved her sculpted body. I asked her what she did. She gave me some tips. And like from then on out, it just kind of snowballed. I got my personal training certification. I started reading everything that was fitness. I became a personal trainer online, in person,
Sure.
read everything. I was just like a healthy obsession, I would say. Everything I did was like fitness, fitness, nutrition, nutrition, fitness. And I transformed my body along the way. And yeah, I guess they say the rest is history.
So your initial transformation after your daughter, what was that like? Was that like a big weight loss like amount at that time for you?
Yeah, it was about 40 pounds, but it wasn't, I can't say it took in 6 months I weighed this or I weighed that. I don't
Right.
think I had a
It was
scale
just
at the
gradual.
time. Yeah, it was gradual. I fell in love with weightlifting and I didn't
Yes.
think about the weight loss. I thought about lifting heavier weights. And, I always try to tell my clients that, and I know it's so tempting to, step on scales and it's a great piece of the puzzle and a good tracking device, but it's such a small piece of the puzzle. So I was
Totally.
obsessed with like lifting heavier weights. How many can I lift for my overhead press? I started with 5 pounds. Now I do 40, right? So it was always like,
Yes.
what can I do? I want more. I want more. I want more. And I started signing up for these fitness shows, which were they were great for me at the time because I was like, these girls have bigger shoulders than me. I want bigger shoulders. The only way to get
Right.
bigger shoulders is by lifting more weight. So it wasn't about less is more. It wasn't about being skinny on my transformation journey. It was really, truly about sculpting a body that made me strong and proud and all those things.
That's awesome. So what would you like looking back at like your when you first got into fitness to now, how would you say that your fitness and health philosophy has changed? Because, back, when you first started, the information that we were given and what was available scientifically has quite literally changed to now. So how did that affect you from when you first started to what your current fitness philosophy is today?
I would say that I had a really great beginning. I didn't start on, a detox tea or anything like that. So I had that
Sure.
real good foundation of progressive overload, lifting weights, not
Yes.
overdoing cardio, eating enough carbs, fats, and proteins, not cutting food groups, so things like that. So I would say the philosophy now at 44, which is almost 20 years later, is the same in that the
Okay.
basics, the foundations are still the
Are the
same.
same.
Things that have changed throughout the years with different issues in my life, whether it was, losing, I went through 9 years of secondary infertility and losing my period due to over competing. I did 17 shows in 7 years and just
Wow.
body fat percent being too low and cortisol being too high and losing my
Sure.
menstruation. So I had to change some things up and look at things like in I think the biggest change in my life over the 20 years has been looking more inwards and realizing that I need to maybe rest more than I was resting, maybe including yoga and mobility. Like when I was young,
Sure.
what mobility didn't enter the equation. I didn't care.
Yes.
But now as I look as I age, mobility is important, range of motion is
Yes.
important, cortisol levels are important, and all of those things. I also feel I can get away with a little bit less. Like I can't over consume alcohol or over consume caffeine. So I'm a little bit more aware of what I put in my body. Whereas back then, you know, I wasn't as aware of the symptoms of certain kinds of overdoing caffeine. Like I was think I would
Sure.
do 10 cups of coffee at one point when I was competing so much. And it didn't have such a negative effect on me at the time. Whereas at
Now
44,
it would.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure you
Definitely.
know.
Yes.
I'm preaching to the
Yes.
choir.
Yes. So we will be right back with Rita getting into a little bit more about her passion and who she's helping now. Hey, you, are you ready to embark on a transformation journey to a healthier, happier you? Join a community of like minded women by subscribing to Strong Fitness Magazine today. All right, guys, we're back with Rita Catalino and, just kind of going over what her fitness philosophy is and that the basics are really the foundation to, her longevity and her, fitness philosophy. And that hasn't wavered, which is really cool to hear, strength and progressive overload, those things that are the basis of any strong body. Um, now with, your business and the, fitness industry, who are you passionate about helping today, and how do you help that person?
I think that I am open and passionate about helping anybody who is open to wanting help. Does that make sense? So
Sure.
obviously people, my niche tends to be 45 to 65-year-old women, right? Kind of that hormonal woman
Yes.
who is tired of doing all these fad diets and is ready to really invest in their health and sees the longevity and sustainability in what I do. But I still work with 20-year-olds, and I've worked with 16-year-olds. When somebody wants help, I want to help them because I know what fitness, lifting weights, proper nutrition, all of those things have done for me, and had that trickle effect in my life. Into my career, my relationships, and who I am as a person. I know how positive it's been. So I would never say no to anyone who is willing and open to wanting to be coached. So are they coachable? I don't.
That's number one.
Yeah, number one, are they coachable? That's, I think,
Sure.
the most important thing, because they could be my niche client, 46, going through the exact same things I am, but then, they don't want to change a thing that they're doing, even though
Right.
it's not yielding results. And I think that's a challenge for any type of coach. So
Sure.
coachable, open. And then I think the female client, I have worked with men and I enjoy working with men. To be honest, they're a little bit easier because they are not, as emotionally driven or
Right.
as scale driven or with a female client, it's always that emotional piece, the hormonal piece.
Right.
We tend to be the caregivers, so giving to everybody else but ourselves. And men seem to be a little bit more, oh, I eat this, oh, I do this, okay, I do this. It's a little bit
Sure.
more, yeah. So I enjoy working with men, but they don't challenge me as a coach to grow and learn
As much.
yeah, yeah.
Now, what would you say, like, to that woman who comes to you, but then you realize they're not kind of willing to change? Like, what would you say to that person? Like, they want, okay, I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to get fit. I don't really care how much I weigh. I just really want to see muscle, but they're not really willing to change their day because they don't realize that is the essence of where it comes from. Like, what do you say to that person to get them like on board, to get them to realize, like, no, you need to change?
um I do it slowly, tough love, there's conversations, there's Zooms, there's messages, there's third. I was, in psychology, they say you need to hear things from 3 different sources before you actually believe it to be true. So if
Ooh,
they're
I like
just
that.
getting it from me, then they
It's
may,
not
so
enough.
then I like to give an article, maybe something science-based. I share information with them. I share another client's story. I had a client just like that,
Yeah.
I forget the whole uh but I see them. I know where you're at. I've been there. I understand change is hard, but up until now, we've been doing this for so long, yielding 0 results. And I really know you want to make that change, or I always bring it back to their why. So when you start a program with me, I send them this video of their why, and I call it their
Oh,
future
yeah.
self. Yeah, their future self. And they write a letter to their future self, but they write it in the present. Like, I woke up today, I feel light, the sun is shining, I can't wait to get my workout in. So their writing is that future self. And I like to bring it back to that when they maybe messed up, are feeling guilty, are unwilling to change, like you said, all of those things. And then I bring it back to their why. How strongly is that why? How strong do
Right.
you want that why? Also, when they fill out a questionnaire with me, when they start working, I have a question at the very end, is how, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your dedication level? And if I can go back to that, and many times I pull out their
You're
initial,
like, look what you
yeah,
said.
you got a 10 over here. A 10 means willing to do things outside of my comfort zone. A 10 means willing to do things that are foreign to me. A 10 is maybe trusting in you because I've hired you as my coach and trusting in your
Sure.
expertise to take me along this way. So just a nice, gentle approach, tough love, a little bit of, as I said, different sources, not just me. So they know that this isn't the Rita show, that it is, years and years of
Them.
education, expertise, and lots of different trial and error.
Sure. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So, working with, you said the typical client you work with is like 45 to 65 years old. So a lot of things that comes up, and, even for our readers in that age range, anti-aging, hormones, longevity. So I want to kind of dig into those topics and see like like what's your philosophy? Where are you at with like anti-aging practices, with hormone practices, delving into longevity, being that, that we're going to hear that word so much more frequently in the next, decade. Where do you stand upon with those?
Yeah. What did I hear recently? It wasn't anti-aging because there's that negative connotation to like not age because we're all aging, right? So it's
Right.
like aging,
Aging well.
yeah,
Yeah.
aging well, right? So I, it really goes back to the very first question you asked me about my training foundation and philosophies then and now, and that it hasn't changed. And those are the same things that I share with my clients. Yes, this hormonal woman is in a different place than she was at 20, but it's still doing those same foundational things. So it's not looking at fad diets, not looking at the newest, group fitness classes that are going to have
Right.
you doing all these crazy things and ending up like, just because you sweat a lot doesn't mean that your is happy, right?
Yeah.
I worked out this morning, I didn't break a sweat, but it was a very slow, methodical, thought out
Sure.
program that doesn't raise my cortisol, that doesn't have my hormones all over the place, that doesn't have me, starving in the fridge because I've overexerted myself. So it's just looking at those foundational practices again and making sure that they're eating enough. A lot of women tend to undereat, making sure that they're not overtraining. It's really important to emphasize rest days, increasing their NEAT so they're out of their exercise window. Are they walking? Are they gardening? Are they skiing? Are they all those things? And just looking at their lifestyle. And I think lifestyle is more important now at 45 than say at 20. If a client at 20 is lifting weights and eating the meal plan, they'll get results regardless if there's, I remember sleeping 3 hours a night and then partying and then doing this.
Right.
Great. You'll probably still get your results,
Not when you're in your 40s. Yeah.
Not when you're in your 40s. You need your sleep. Yeah. So I like it. I like a holistic approach. And when my clients do their weekly check-ins with me, questions are about bowel movements, questions are about energy, questions are about sleep, questions are about digestion, all of these things, because they give you a full picture.
What's going
as
on?
Opposed to how much weight did you lose? Did you eat your protein? Right. So I think that's a major change in that. Yeah, the lifestyle.
Do you feel like, I know when I talk to women, especially, a lot of times they are trying to do the same things they did when they were 20, but they don't even necessarily realize it. Like, they're not counting how many hours they're sleeping. They're not reducing alcohol. It's like they still want to they want to be a 45-year-old woman in a body that they're proud of, but they still want to act like they did when they're 20, right? Like, it's like those lifestyle elements, they need to evolve as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yes.
And do you, like, when it comes to longevity and stuff, do you have any doctors or mentors or books that you've read that you like absolutely love that have made a huge impact on you and like more recently?
No, not recently. I mean, I follow an anti-inflammatory diet, and there's a lot of books that I've read about anti-inflammatory lifestyle. There's I'm not sure if this pertains to your question, but there's somebody I've just recently followed, The Glucose Goddess, I think is her book. It's Jessie Incape. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but she's from France, and she's kind of like the new rage, and it's more about regulating your glucose and how glucose spikes and affect our weight gain, our inflammation in our body, because a lot of people you see walking around are inflamed rather than adipose tissue fat. It's just this systemic inflammation of the wrong types of foods or things like that. So it's interesting, and I follow an anti-inflammatory diet. So it's not only, I know a lot of our listeners may be counting macros. Great. It's a great thing to know. but what foods and categories are going into that macronutrient, right? Are we looking at micronutrients?
Right.
We're looking at foods that Gail, you may have a food that you love and that's healthy, like broccoli, and I can't eat it because it doesn't digest well with me,
Sure.
or it creates an inflammatory or trigger response in my body. So those are things that as we age and look at sustainability, we have to really focus on, autonomy, looking at ourselves, looking in the mirror.
Yes.
What is serving me, even though it's the buzz health food word, or it works for Gail,
Right.
or it works for Christina, it's not going to work for me. So even when I'm
Being
working,
your own advocate, basically.
you have to be your own advocate and really listen to your body. Like, I wake up every morning and it's almost like I ask my buddy, what do you need today? And
Sure.
I might have planned a lower body workout, but my body needs something different, a walk in nature, or something like that. And it's not an excuse to get on my training, because my training happens each week, but maybe it gets moved around.
Shifted.
Yeah, shifted a little bit. And I think that autonomy and self-reflection is really important, especially as we age as women in this whole fitness situation. Yeah.
I love how you brought up, that self-awareness component. What kind of practices do you do daily or weekly, as far as like whether it be like meditation or breath work or journaling? Like, what are your self-awareness practices?
I wake up every day, blank page on my desk, and I just write. Like, it's like a brain dump, whether it be what I have to do that day or what I'm grateful for. It looks different every day depending on what.
Sure.
Sometimes I stray from that practice, but one of my mentors taught me years ago, and this is something that I always come back to, is before, whether you have a home office like you do and I do, is before, I like to clean it up every night and kind of set everything for the morning, and leave a blank piece of paper with 4 quadrants. So you draw like a cross, and they're called the 4 rooms. And one is physical, one is emotional, one is mental, and one is spiritual. And you just leave that empty and you write those titles on. And your goal at the end of the day is to enter each room equally throughout the day. So yeah, so it's
like that.
Physical, because there was a time in my life when I started in this and I was so obsessed with weightlifting that I spent most of my time in the physical box, right?
And that was it.
That was it. And I didn't think about how I felt, or I didn't do any prayer, and I didn't do this. And I was like, I was a robot. And that ended up creating some issues in my life later with so much like this myopic view of health. And then so little by little, when she taught me this years ago, and it's something I always come back to, and I've just recently started practicing.
That's a great practice. I love that.
Yeah. So, and that could work, you may not be religious, and that's why I write spiritual. I have a very close connection with God, but that could be for you, universe. It could be whatever it is for you. Spiritual doesn't have to mean a religion for me.
And I think people forget that is a equal component to our health. Right.
Absolutely.
Like it's not just you by yourself alone in this world, right? Like, regardless of your beliefs or your religion or whatever your faith practices are, we need that in our lives. Like, to be a fully healthy, functioning person, that is equally as important as getting your workout in that day.
100%.
And whatever that means to you, it's interpretable, right? Like, everybody can have their own interpretation.
Yeah. So I love that. And then for somebody who's not working out, maybe they're new to this podcast and they just want to get inspired. Maybe it's the physical world that maybe they spend a lot of time in that mental, and they're writing and they're working and they're, using all that, but they're not in that physical space. So can you make it a little less
more balanced?
Yeah, more balanced. So I like having that 4 quadrant rooms. They're called the rooms. I think it comes from an ancient Buddhist practice. I will look it up and let you know, but
yeah, that sounds cool. I really like that.
Yeah,
that's an easy takeaway. That's something that is practical for each of us. Everybody could draw 2 lines on a piece of paper, right? And kind of give themselves a daily or a weekly evaluation of how did I do in these areas today, just to keep
and then getting out in nature. Like right now, I know it's hard in Ontario where we live, but we've had some beautiful days recently. And before I came to this podcast today, I went for an 1.5-hour walk with my girlfriend, and that fuels my soul. Like, instead of saying let's get for cocktails, let's get together for a long hike. And that,
Yes.
being in nature, walking, I do 3 Epsom salt baths a week. I get in a hot sauna when I can. These are just little things that I try to do too.
Yeah.
But the morning dump, whether it's gratitude and or this 4 room just giving to me, I get up before the whole house gets up. It just
Yeah.
it allows me to be less reactive and just be more proactive in my day. And I'm setting the tone and the energy for what's coming my way instead of
Yes.
me getting up late, reactive to the world. And I have a toddler and a teenager, so I'm dealing with these 2 different worlds. So yeah.
Yeah, that helps to keep you in an even place, right? Like your bandwidth is managed then and your energy is managed. Yeah. I think we overlook that piece of wellness so frequently. It's like, oh, I got to get my workout in. Oh, I got to eat this food. It's like, yeah, but where's your energy at? Where's your bandwidth at today, right? Like are you screaming at your kids, or are you able to step back and be like, hey, all right, guys, like let's handle this differently. Like that, those things matter. They really do.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah. Awesome. We will be right back with Rita, talking about some more topics as her fitness philosophy evolves and sharing her daily practices with us. Have you been killing it in the gym and would love to appear in the pages of Strong Fitness Magazine? Contact us through our website, strongfitnessmag.com. We'd love to hear from you. Welcome back here with Rita Catolino, our strong cover athlete and health expert. So enjoying getting into this discussion with you. The next thing I want to talk about
I love how you pronounce my last name, by the way, because most people mess it up and you're like spot on. So good job.
Oh, good. Thanks. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Kind of something not necessarily fitness related, but I would love to know. I mean, you've done a lot of things. You've been on a lot of covers. You've competed. You've had 2 kids. You've traveled the world, all this stuff. What is left on your bucket list? Like, what does Rita, like before you die, like what other things like do you absolutely have to do and or experience in this lifetime?
Oh, I don't. That's a great question, and one I actually have never been asked or thought about. Good question. I don't think I have like that bucket list. Like I have to go to this country or walk this mountain or anything like that. I think more about, especially as my daughter's aging, she's turning 17, she's thinking about universities.
Yeah.
It's about kind of the legacy that I leave, like when I leave this world, hopefully in a long time, what am I leaving behind? What will people think of me? How will I impact my daughter's life? How will she keep me moving forward? I don't know. I think more about what I'll leave on this earth rather than things I have to do on a bucket list. I wrote a book. This is probably the biggest thing I would say. I wrote a book with a very well-known scientific journalist in Sweden, and it's in Swedish. I wrote my part in English. She wrote it in Swedish, and then it was translated fully into Swedish. It's been in Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. And my goal would be for that book to be in English. So we're working with, we're seeing what that looks like to get that published in English, because that was a year and a half of my life during COVID that I wrote that. And it is like all of my philosophies, all of her philosophies. And I love that book. It's like my baby. Unfortunately, nobody can read it in North America. I can't even read my own book.
That's so sad, but like also such a great thing to like, let's get that translated so we can get it to everyone, right?
Yes, we are working on that, her and I, right now. So that would be my biggest kind of professional and a personal goal, to get out there before in the next, few years, which would be fantastic. I would love on a personal level, I would love to retire in Europe, whether Spain or Italy. I don't see myself in Canada long term. I know that's dictated by children and where they're at,
sure.
And all that, but I thoroughly enjoy the way they live in Italy and Spain, and I think holistically it's a lot healthier than our North American lifestyle. And I know people are like, well, why don't you just live the way you lived in, because I lived in Spain for 5 years, why don't you just live that way here, because it's just not conducive Our culture is different. The hours are different. The
You
weather
can't
is
even get
different.
like the ingredients, the way they're grown, the way the cows are treated, the way the
Everything.
soil's treated. Like you can't get that here,
No.
unfortunately. I mean, it's so sad, but like when you are there, it's like just the way that, like, if you go to those places, they have special laws that protect
Yes.
the soil,
GMOs are
that protect,
illegal.
right,
Yes.
that
Yes.
protect, so it's like when you get butter from a cow, it had to eat on certain grass that was grown in certain soil. It's like that matters actually. And we
Yes.
don't have that. Yeah.
Yes. So long, like sustainable, and I'm sure you know about blue zones where people live
Yes.
the longest in the world. These are topics. If you talked to Rita 10 years ago, I wouldn't even be talking about these with you because there's something that changed from like 30 to 40 where it's like, whoa,
Like
we're not,
totally.
we're not invincible. We are going to die and this is going to happen. And you
Right.
see the older generations, like my parents' generations, the one before, they didn't have all of this information and education at their fingertips. We do. So what can we do about it? We know
Exactly.
that these blue zones in Costa Rica, Nosara, and Okinawa, and Japan, and in
Right.
Sardinia, Italy, what are the common denominators?
Mhm.
Walking outside every day, warmer weather, being in community. We don't, anyway, where I live in Ontario,
It's not the same.
there's no community. We don't have a local piazza or square
Markets.
where
Yeah.
everyone's going with the kids. Everyone's going to the bars at night or staying home locked in their house.
Right.
It's just the
Yeah.
community piece is such a big important thing. Obviously, the food and the soils, like you said, the one glass
But
of
the
wine.
lifestyle, like the
It's
lifestyle, like,
yeah.
like, yeah, you walk the easily. I have friends that live in Italy and, easily they get 20,000 steps a day, not even doing anything,
Oh,
but like
not even
they're
trying.
not just like going to the market and taking their daughter to school and, this and that and the other. It's just, that's just the lifestyle. You
You're
know,
not Italian, Gail. You
I'm not, no.
you look more Italian than I look. Like
I
looking
could
at you,
pass
I'm
for
like,
it, but yeah,
you
no,
look
but
Italian.
I would love to live in Italy someday. It's gorgeous.
Yes,
It's wonderful.
we spend our summers there, and I always at the end of the summer, my husband and I look at each other like, why are
What are
we?
we doing?
And I know it's just habitual. So I
Kids.
think part of your question and my really long-winded answer is, aside from the book professionally, I think on a personal level, I would love to see my life come to fruition in Europe in the next, I don't know, decade. So I'm going to put it out there to God and to this podcast and see what happens.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, a couple more questions here. I love to always end the podcast with these two questions.
Yeah.
What is something that you would tell your younger pre-fit self?
Oh, start today. Like what, I mean, uh, the earlier you start, the better, right? The more ingrained that is in your lifestyle. Look at my 16-year-old. She comes and lifts weights with me at the gym. She's not
That's so
scared.
great.
Yeah, she's not scared of weight. She's not scared of weights making you bulky. I think the sooner you start, the better, the better you'll be, and the more
Sure.
ingrained it's going to be in who you are and what you do, and it's going to become second nature, like breathing to you. So definitely start now. I would tell my younger self, my younger fitter self, start now. And what else would I tell her? I don't know, like stay the course. I would tell her to not, throw in the towel, that things will change, body will change, hormones will change, pre-pregnancy, post-pregnancy, all the things, but just stay the course because it's worth it. Because the dividends that you get from weightlifting far exceed any other type of activity that you could do, right? You're going to always reap
Definitely.
the rewards of
Yeah.
weightlifting, of lifting weights, of fitness, of all those things.
Yeah, I always say it's so cool that we're creating a generation of children that like yoga is just normal to them. They see lifting weights is just normal. It's just part of the day. You know what I mean? Like fitness is just a normal component of a life as opposed to it being like, when we grew up, it like, oh, don't get bulky or, oh, you got to do all this. You can only do cardio or things. So I think it's really cool that we're being examples for the next generation as like just making it like my kids lifting weights is just normal. They don't have they don't think it's weird or, they don't know any different, right? I think that's
Absolutely.
awesome that your teenager is already on that. That's
She loves
awesome.
it. Yesterday, she's like, "Can we go to the gym? And what are we lifting?" And We were actually doing glute thrusts and I had 45 kilos on me and she looked at me and she's like, give me one. And so I put one on her and I'm like, I gotta up my weights. My
Yeah.
6-year-old is kicking my butt. Yeah. So
That's
it's
awesome.
cool. Yeah.
I love hearing that. That's wonderful. And then our final question today I have for you is, what does being a strong woman mean to you?
Ooh, that's a good one too. I wish you sent me these like a week ago. I'd written you this perfect essay. I'm kidding.
It's so much better when it's
That's not what
organic
you
and
want.
it's,
I know.
yeah, I
So
know.
being strong, I think for me means strength over struggle, right? So when you can overcome an obstacle in your life, mentally, physically, emotionally, that's strength to me because, it's seeing something instead of feeling like you have to be defeated or it's a loss. It's overcoming that in whichever way possible you can, coming out the other side. That's strength to me, right? So
Yes.
overcoming obstacles and not throwing in the towel, not giving in, not throwing a tantrum and being like, I can handle this. That's what life is about. It's what's this next barrier and overcoming it, and what's the next one and overcoming it. So strength over struggle would be my final answer.
I love that. That's great. I think it's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
Well, Rita, I just want to thank you so much for being here with me today for this episode of Strong Talks. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and getting to kind of dig into the way that your mind works, your philosophy for our readers. And I can't wait for them to hear this and get to love you too.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you, Gail. I could talk here forever, but I know that people are going to want to get on with their day, but it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.